Hi, and welcome to the Believe in the Land show. My name is Andy Billman. Let's take a look back at the week that was in Cleveland sports. Busy week this week as the Browns finished up mandatory minicamp. The Guardians had a home slate of games with Boston, and Houston actually had a good week. And the Cavaliers, well, they're probably sunbathing somewhere on the beach. Lucky them. And then we had a new Big Ten schedule, which we're going to get to at the end of the show today. But let's start off with the Guardians first. They had a very good week, 4-2. It's always a good week when you win 4 out of 6 games playing against teams like the Red Sox and the Astros. They had actually a couple games this week, too, that we'll put in the laugher category. That's very rare. But we'll start off, and then we'll do the 4 things for this week that I noticed. But let's start off with the Friday night game, as that was a very unique game indeed. In fact, it broke some Major League Baseball type of stats. They were one of the rare teams to come back 5 times from a deficit after the 7th inning, coming back in the 7th, coming back in the 9th, and multiple times in extra innings to finally win the game 10-9 against the Astros. It was a wonderful victory. By far their best victory of the year. They've had other good victories this year. They had a great win in the Bronx against New York where they were down and dead in the water, came back and won. Being down in the 9th, they came back and won a wonderful game at home against St. Louis earlier this year. Both were really good wins. But this win was very, very special. The Guardians have not been able to really get into a groove, but since the win in home against St. Louis with the walk-off to Jose Ramirez, it has been much better for our Guardians. They have done a much, much, much better job. And they're finally starting to get their groove. And they're not doing it against teams that aren't very good. This is not a path where they played the Royals and the Tigers and the White Sox. They played Baltimore in Baltimore, very good team. The Minnesota Twins are in first place in Minnesota. And they've done it at home against the Red Sox and Astros, and they have a winning record. There are some signs that this is really coming together for this young club. And they are still very young, even though they have experience in the playoffs. But Friday night was wonderful. It was such a good game. Back and forth, multiple big players playing big. Jose Abreu with a big home run to really kick it off for the Astros. Jose Ramirez was not going to be denied. He had a tremendous night. He was 3 for 4, including the home run to get it tied for the first time at 5. And then Josh Naylor came in later in the 9th. He had another big game on Friday night as well. But it's just great to see the resilience of the Guardians, and not in a game where they won 4-3 or they won 5-4. It was 10-9, battling back and made it. This was the makeup game for the Mets loss earlier this year when they lost on a Friday night game to Frankie Lindor walking off. This made up for all of that and more. It just felt so good. It's a kind of win. If you play it right, you could ride the momentum swing for a little bit. You could see the Guardians getting hot for a little bit. You can feel that this is a type of win that you can galvanize and ride into the sunset. It was that special. The big play in the game on Friday night was Stephen Kwan's fantastic catch in the 13th. It was 8-7. Astros had come back again to take in the lead. And it looked like Stephen Kwan had made the catch. They originally called it that he dropped it. Replay showed he caught it. If he does not make that catch, the Astros certainly, and it was a diving, sprawling catch by Kwan. A gold glove performance by Kwan on that play. If he does not make that catch, the Astros go up 10-7 and you can turn out the lights. He makes the catch. And not only does he make the catch, but in typical baseball fashion, he came back in the bottom of the 13th, getting the hit to take the lead again and tie the game again. Huge double by Stephen Kwan. You know, we haven't mentioned Kwan's name a lot. He's quietly actually having a very good year. He's a good leadoff hitter. He is not going to, wow you with fireworks. He doesn't hit home runs, we all know, but he is very consistent, and he is right in the middle of this lineup when things are going well. And Stephen Kwan, again, we kind of forget about him at times. He is having a good season. He's not having great. I think he's having a typical sophomore year where some things aren't have not come as easy for Quan, but there's other things that you can tell, and this moment's one of them, where he is ready for the big stage. He is ready for prime time. That Friday night performance by Quan in the 13th inning was the game-saving play. You could feel the momentum turn when he hit the double tied at 8. I remember after that play, I was like, even if the Astros come back and score, I think the Guardians are going to win this game. They end up doing it with multiple hits from Tyler Freeman and Will Brennan, the young guns again, for the Guardians to win it 10-9. Just an exciting victory. But to get help from all phases of the team, Jose Ramirez, Will Brennan, Stephen Kwan, Josh Naylor. Oh, I mean, Naylor had a huge night on Friday. All the guys contributing, all of them helping out to get the win. It was an uplifting game, and it wasn't a game where it was half filled. The crowds this week at Progressive Field have been tremendous, and it really enhanced the victory. The crowds, they had an all-time high crowd on Saturday against the Astros with 35,000 plus. Great sign. The crowds have been very good this year for the Guardians. They are not down. Even though the record is below 500, the crowds are coming to these games. But again, not to downplay the Friday night game really could be used as a beacon of hope this year. I think the first one was the Cardinals win. This was the second one. And the thing I love about this is they're doing it in a stretch where they're not playing clubs that are light-footed. These are big boys, good clubs that are doing big things. Baltimore is going to the playoffs unless something really collapses. Minnesota's winning the division. The Red Sox, they're down, but they're still a 500 club, and they're still the Red Sox with an excellent offense. And then the Astros are probably right in the mix too, as we all know, probably making the playoffs too, even though the Rangers do have a sizable lead right now. I mean, it's still early enough where the Astros can catch them. But these are the type of things, these are the type of wins that can define a season. And they certainly looked like it did on Friday. It was that exciting. It was great to have a big crowd like that and to do it against the world champ Astros. It has a lot of meaning. It really does. It has a lot of meaning behind it. So when you have a week like this, and with the Twins losing today, you're now one in back of the Twins heading into next week. Next week's not easy. So where does this leave the Shane Bieber stuff? Where's the Shane Bieber trade rumors? I think they kind of go on the shelf right now. The Guardians cannot make a playoff run, winning the World Series, taking down big things without Shane Bieber. You have to have Shane Bieber with you. I've said it a couple times. I think Shane Bieber's days after this season are numbered. I don't see him being back on the club after this year. You might have to wait to trade him until the offseason. But another reason why you might have to wait is because right now the Guardians do have an advantage in their starting pitching. The Guardians actually do have good starters. They are in the top half. They're in the top third in quality starts in baseball, even though they did not have a lot of quality starts lately. They did today with Bieber, which we'll get to in a second. But you have Bieber, Logan Allen, Bybee, and of course McKenzie's back. Aaron Savali's back. Kyle Quantrill's somewhere in this mix. But you want that you can really win some playoffs. You can win with Bieber and McKenzie and to the young guns. You can win. You can win some games. You take Bieber away, and it's just not as easy as a road. And you need Bieber's experience. You need Bieber's talent to get you to big places. You just do. So I think the Bieber trade rumors get set aside for right now. Now, I'm going to say this again. If you trade for Shane Bieber in season, and you still think you need a big back, which the Guardians do need a bat. They're a bat short. They're about 2 bats short last year. This year, they are truthfully a bat short. They need, and it's a big thumper. They need someone who can get ribbies and hit the ball out. Can Shane Bieber bring you that? I don't know. I think they can. I do. Especially to the right team. The Cardinals, the Rangers, you might be competing with in the playoffs if you get there, which I think the Guardians will. I think the Guardians will on some point overtake the Twins. I think you can get a big bumper for them. I do. Baltimore too. but you need a ready-to-go player now. Now, that's not usually how the Guardians go. But I think for right now, I think for this week, the Shane Bieber trade rumors get put out a little bit. We'll have to see how they do this week. This week, I don't think is a make or break week. It's at San Diego, it's at Arizona, and that's a tough stretch of games. I'll tell you what, the Guardians did what they had to do to get this one game out in the loss column before you head out west. That's what they needed to do. They dug themselves a little bit of hole because they lost some games they shouldn't have. But here they are. They're right there. And now they gave themselves a little bit of, hey, because again, like you want a little bit of pad in case you struggle at San Diego and Arizona, which I think you are. I think you're going to a little bit. Those are not easy games. Arizona's winning the West. That says a lot. It tells you how good the Arizona Diamondbacks are. And San Diego's got a lot of nameplate. So they've kind of given themselves a little bit of pad, which is good. But the Shane Bieber trade rumors, I think they get shelved right now. Still means he's going to get shipped? Yes, it does. Still means that there's things that are coming for Shane Bieber that are meaning he's not going to be in the club anymore? Yeah. Might just be a little more delayed. Maybe goes into late July. Or if this continues the way it is, you're talking offseason, which is probably what's going to happen here. You just can't trade Shane Bieber and then expect to roll through the playoffs. It's just not being reasonable. This is not. But that win on Friday was huge. Huge. It changed momentum again. And what was wonderful is against a great team, the returning champs like the Astros. When we get back, more Guardians and the four things from this week. Welcome back to the Believe in the Land show. My name is Andy Billman, and this is the week that was in Cleveland sports, our weekly radio show and podcast. If you love instantaneous analysis after every Guardians game, go to @officialclevelandsports on Instagram. It's @official Cleveland Sports on Instagram. Check it out. Allergies took over there for a second. It's been a horrible allergy week. Lost my hot water heater this week, so sitting here in pollen, cannot wait for tomorrow. Anyways, enough about that. Great coverage. Go to @officialclevelandsports. We'll be there in the fall for the Browns, and eventually, before you know it, it'll be NBA season again in October for the Cavaliers as well. Buckeye football too. Go to @officialclevelandsports. If you like great, thoughtful, caring coverage, go to BelieveInTheLand.com. Also go to Believe in the Land on YouTube. All videos, other things there you can find weekly for your Cleveland viewing pleasure. All right, so the four things for this week. Again, the big one on Friday. Number one, the Naylor, Brennan, and JRAM. All three had really big weeks. Let's start off with the obvious one, JRAM. JRAM has not had a week where he's really gone off like this until this week. He went off this week. He was tremendous in the Friday night victory. He played well really throughout the week, having multiple. He had a big game too on Thursday where he really carried and lifted the Guardians to he had 3 home runs on Thursday. And then eventually the Avalanche came over when Corey Kluber came in the game. But it was a big week for JRAM. And, it goes without saying, but it needs to be said. When JRAM gets this hot, Guardians are going to really win some games. And they are. JRAM's been very, very hot this week. So it's not surprising they've gone 4-2. You knew eventually it was going to happen. The attentional walks are way up this week. There's been a lot of attention paid to JRAM. But the great thing that we've been waiting for and we kind of saw this week was JRAM's power. I mean, he had multiple home runs this week. And like I say, he had 3 alone on Thursday. And it's just great. It's just great to see. Really, really a big week for JRAM. Finally had that week where he just tore the cover off the ball. Really carried the Guardians. I thought through that Red Sox game, even though it was a blowout, he kind of carried them, and he gave them a huge lift on Friday with that home run to tie to 5. So JRAM with a big week. Josh Naylor has just, since that Baltimore Orioles game where he went off in that day game, he has been on just fire. His batting average has jumped 60 points basically from that point on. Naylor is right now he's starting to get in that position where he's starting to get noticed in baseball, not just by Guardians fans. He's risen up the ladder in RBIs. His batting average is close to 300 now. It's around 280s. So he's actually having a great, great stretch. And, Naylor, kind of like Stephen Kwan, I think sometimes we take for granted Stephen Kwan and Josh Naylor. But boy, Josh Naylor just does a lot for this club. He hits in big spots. The last 2 years, he's hit in big spots on multiple occasions. It didn't change this week. He was huge for the Guardians this week. Just tremendous. And, when you have JRAM and Naylor going off, you're going to beat the Astros 2 out of 3. And that's basically what happened. They really, again, that Friday night game, you cannot win. You cannot win without Josh Naylor and Jose Ramirez. And they're both so good. He has really found his groove. And again, he's hitting big. He is really, really hot. And again, JRAM was from the Cleveland Guardians perspective. Josh Naylor is starting to get noticed in baseball. He is starting to get recognized. He is that hot right now. And same goes for Will Brennan. All three have really been on fire. Brennan has been hot for the last 2 weeks as well. He did not have a good at-bat 2 weeks ago on a Sunday against the Cardinals. And since that at-bat, he has just played so well. You can't take him out of the lineup. Can't do it. He's actually become a staple. He has really taken over where Oscar Gonzalez was last year. He's giving the team the same kind of effect now. And it's ironic. This is about the time last year where Gonzalez was coming into play for the Guardians, and Will Brennan, who's been on the club all year, has really come into play for the last 2 weeks, late May and early June. He has brought that Gonzalez-type energy. Brennan has just been tremendous, and he's tremendous again this week. Game-winning walk-off hit on Friday night. Huge stuff. Can't underplay it. He's starting to get a feel for right field as well. He's not a perfect glove, but he's getting better. But these three players, JRAM, Brennan, and Naylor, really carried the club this week. Just having huge weeks. If it's one of again, on normal weeks, you'd be pointing out one of them. It's hard not to point to one because they all just were so very good in different spots. This is why the Guardians offense is really starting to hum. And that goes to point number 2. So number 1, Naylor, Brennan, JRAM, all huge weeks. Number 2, the runs are way up. Guardians had 2 10 spots this week. Had multiple 5 spots and 2 4 spots. Nothing below 4. And that's a huge deal to the Guardians. Guardians are not a team that scores a lot of runs. So for that's huge. They basically average over 5 runs a game this week. That's really, really big. And they needed to do that this week. Their pitching is not perfect. It's good. It's not elite. So for the Guardians to be hitting this week is a huge, huge, good sign. Number 1, catalyze number 2. But I'll say this, the runs are up, and you can feel it. They're finally putting pressure on these teams. They're finally really enforcing what they can do. The strikeouts have really come down for the Guardians last 2 weeks as well. They're now second in baseball in strikeouts, meaning they don't strike out a lot. They have the least amount of strikeouts. They're their second team with the least amount of strikeouts. They're putting the ball in play. They're putting pressure on their opponent, and they're really forcing teams to take notice that they're putting the ball in play. And some of those balls that weren't really dropping, they are dropping now, and balls are being hit harder right now. You really see it from Jimenez, especially when he is hitting, ball goes in play. You're really seeing it from Stephen Kwan. Ball gets hit hard. He's getting roped. It's getting hit hard. Those are great things to see when you're a Guardians fan. Huge week. Guardians have to have offense. That's why the Bieber stuff is real, because they need another bat. The Guardians are going to have to find a way to get a bat if they want to do really big things in October. They have to find a way to get a bat. Have to. Puts them in a really big quandary because they can trade Bieber, but if you trade Bieber, I think you lose the opportunity to have the pitching that you really need to win October. So it's kind of a catch-22. All that to be said, middle of June, you can't worry about that as much. Guardians are scoring runs, is good. So number one, Naylor, Brennan, and JRAM all having big weeks, which is the catalyst to runs are way up this week is number 2. Way up. To have 2 10 spots, to have 2 laughers. Huge to see. Huge to see. Number 3 is the Mike Zunino hate train is all aboard. For everything that happened good this week, the catcher position really got banged around. Unfortunately for Mike Zunino, he had a very poor game on Saturday against the Astros. Had another pass ball where the ball was right around the shoulders. I hate to say it, but I'm just got to be accurate. The pass ball that happened on Saturday night was something you would see in middle school baseball. Not acceptable in this level at all. At all. Wouldn't be acceptable in high school. Got to catch that ball. He is having a rough. He had a really. I mean, he wasn't having a good week anyways heading into Saturday, but Saturday was Captain Kaplui for Zunino. He also had another throwing error going into center field, and then he throw in a couple strikeouts in that game in a double play ball, and the boos were starting to get really bad for Zunino, which you don't want to see. That's not something that anybody wants to do, but I understand it. I get it. Guy's not playing well, and they keep trotting him out there. And I'll go to bigger picture. There is not a solution right now in this current roster. When I say roster, meaning the 26-man roster. Because you have Bo Naylor. And Bo Naylor has been bantered about a lot this week. And he's starting to get a lot more drumbeat. And this has kind of overtaken the Shane Bieber trade conversation. Bo Naylor needs to be up here. It's pretty clear to me the Guardians are hiding him. Meaning they don't really have an answer. It's so clear. Zunino, Cam Gallagher, and David Fry are backups at best. They are not. I mean, Mike Zunino this year is not an everyday catcher. I'm sorry. I know he had a good season with Tampa Bay. Kudos. He stinks this year. He's not playing well. He had a good stretch of games. This week, he kind of started fading in the Red Sox series, and he face planted really hard on Saturday night against the Astros. That was really bad. Cam Gallagher, backup. David Fry, as a catcher, backup. I mean, these are just backups. Got to get someone in there that can enforce the catcher position. For everything I just said about needing a bat, the catcher situation for the Guardians is a real concern, even in a week where they're winning and they've won. They've really played well in these last 5 series. Winning 4 out of 5 and splitting in Minnesota. They've done that where I think the catcher position 5 series later is not really answered, and I'm more concerned than ever. I would not compare. I've seen some people compare Cam Gallagher to Zunino. I don't even think that's what this is right now. What this is who's the answer? Cam Gallagher is not an everyday catcher either. He's not. Who is the answer for the Guardians? Hopefully it's Bo Naylor. They might need to make a trade for a catcher. Got to see what Bo Naylor can do first, though. There's been some rumors and there's some people bantering. Maybe it's because of arbitration years. Probably. I think it's the reason why they're hiding him. But the Guardians can't go away with anymore with Zunino's here. Zunino stinks. He stinks. You can't protect it. Guardians don't have a catcher right now who's up in Cleveland. I would think Bo Naylor is going to be here in the next, I'd say after this West Coast swing. I think at some point you'll hear about Bo Naylor being brought up. But this Mike Zunino, this is not going to, the Mike Zunino, Cam Gallagher, David Fry show can't go much longer. I'm surprised we've gotten this far, to be honest with you. It's a very big weak position for the Guardians. And for fans to boo off Mike Zunino says a lot about the unhappiness of the position. Again, I know Mike Zunino at one point was an all-star. Again, I know this is a big free agent signing for the club. This hasn't worked out. That what happened and how he played on Saturday was really poor. And again, that I know everybody can get on the ball going into center field, but I thought the pass ball, and he's had multiple of these. It's not just one. The pass ball that's just above his shoulders, I got to be truthful. That's a play that should be made in high school baseball. We're in the major leagues, and he's just letting the ball go by. It's frustrating. Very, very frustrating. And he's had multiple games like this. You can't afford that from a – you just can't. Catcher position, you just cannot afford those kind of plays. Can't afford it. The Guardians are lucky they're getting away with it. Teams are running on the Guardians like crazy. But again, if you think, oh, just play Cam Gallagher all the time, that will burn out too. You cannot just go to the Cam Gallagher card. He's a backup. He is a backup. He can't be playing every day. That will go bad fast. I'm telling you, don't play Cam Gallagher multiple games in a row. Starting catcher. As we head to the West Coast, I'm interested to see can Zunino pull something together this week. He's got to start. You cannot start David Fry. Oh, it's just a mess. Catcher position's a real mess. For everything that's gone well this week, that has gone very poor in that Saturday night game. I mean, it was over before then, but I know they're holding out for arbitration reasons. They want to keep Bo Naylor contractually in Cleveland a little longer. It has not cost him, I think, a whole lot so far, but I think you're getting to that point where you might have a game this week where you go, gosh, catcher cost him a game. And that is the last thing you want. Last thing you want. And again, these are kind of mistakes that Nino's made this year that you would be expected a high school catcher to make. These pass balls just above the shoulder are ridiculous. Got to catch it. And he has a hard time with it. Point number 4, the bullpen was exhausted. It's funny. Last week I spoke very highly of the bullpen, and we didn't. And it's twofold for point number 4. The Guardians got a lack of quality starts. Only got one this week from Shane Bieber today on Sunday. Need some more quality starts. And the Guardians do get good quality starts from their starters. They need more because the bullpen that I thought was starting to get some groove and some vibe, I'm not saying it's a mess, but it's not as clear as what it was a week ago. De Los Santos, I thought, really showed some wear and tear this week. That was a guy I was really considering being a guy you can bring in big spots. Terry Francona was thinking the same thing. And De Los Santos looked very poor against the Red Sox earlier this week. I mean, pouring sweat on the mound, nervous. Not good enough. I mean, that was a bad sign. And then you have James Karinchak, who got sent down to AAA Columbus. Jeez. Oof. And he had been pitching better. But Karinchak's a mess. He's just not. There is something off with him, so I understand why they're doing it, and I would do the same thing. He's been pitching better, but there's something way off. He's not quite grooving the way he can. And they need to find him to groove. He needs to get grooving. So Karinchak sit down. That's a miss. De Los Santos was a mess this week. I thought Clase, even though he had some nerve-wracking moments, was actually pretty good. Stefan actually played better this week. That was good to see. We got Morris coming back from injury. That will be, I guess, helpful. Not really sure what he is yet. He hasn't really pitched a lot. So it's good. I know there's a lot of excitement about him coming back and, whatever else. It's funny. Like, I don't remember him doing much. We haven't seen a lot of Mr. Morris to be like, hey, this is what we're going to get, A, B, and C. I just don't know what Cody Morris is yet. Haven't seen enough of him to have, not saying he's going to be terrible, but I just don't have vibe for him. But they got him up. We'll see how he does. Sam Hentges was better this week. That was good to see. But the clarity from the bullpen with De Los Santos and Karinchak isn't as clear as it was a week ago. Part of it is they need more quality starts, and this week it's huge. It's one thing to do it at home. It's so different when you're on the road. The Guardians really need some quality innings this week. And you only get one Bieber start this week in San Diego and in Arizona. Very, very crucial week for Bybee and for Allen, McKenzie, and Savali to go long. Need some innings, need some quality starts on the road. It's very key. The bullpen is a little worn thin at the moment. It was another exhaustive week for the bullpen. But again, not a lot. Only one quality start. Bieber today was it. Got to get better quality starts as part of it. De Los Santos has got to do better in big spots if he wants to be there, which I'm sure he does. And Karinchak's nowhere to be found this week. He'll be gone for a while. He's got to figure some things out. That's a big miss in the spot, especially when you're getting ready to go on the road on a long West Coast swing. It'd been nice to have Karinchak there, but he's clearly not ready for that spotlight. Naylor, Brennan, and JRAM all have big weeks. Great number 2. The runs are way up this week to 10 spots, 5, 5, and a 4, 4. Basically averaging over 5 runs, over 5 runs this week. That's tremendous for this ball club, as we all know. The Mike Zunino catcher situation is bleak in a week that was very good. And the bullpen looks exhausted. I thought last week we had some clarity. This week we took a step backwards. I thought, the concerning stuff I saw from De Los Santos and Karinchak being set down, the bullpen took a little bit more of a murky look, sadly, for the Guardians this week. They're going to have to figure some things out. Not as clear as it was a week ago. All that to be said, in this stretch, when you're playing teams at Baltimore, at Minnesota, you come home to play the Red Sox, you come home and play the Astros. Let's throw in the Cardinal series before that. They've won 4 out of 5 series, and the one series they didn't win. They didn't lose the series either. They split with Minnesota. Tremendous tough stretch of games, and the Guardians have done pretty well. That's your Cleveland Guardians. They're on the West Coast this week. We come back, Browns. Welcome back to the Believe in the Land show. My name is Andy Billman. If you love instant analysis, go to @OfficialClevelandSports, where they're after every final pitch for the Guardians this year. All 162. Including this week when they're all the way in San Diego and Arizona. Bring your coffee. That's @OfficialClevelandSports on Instagram. We do Buckeyes football, Browns, and Cavaliers. If you love good coverage of the teams that we love and cheer for all the time, go to BelieveInTheLand.com. BelieveInTheLand.com. Also go to our YouTube page, which is, of course, Believe in the Land. All these magical things we're doing is called Believe in the Land. Check us out. I think you'll enjoy it. Browns. So we had mandatory minicamp this week, 3 days. And just to put this in perspective, in case you need reminding, this is when, after this week, really the Browns go into very big hibernation. You won't hear much at all. In fact, the news you will hear might be about a signing, DeAndre Hopkins, which that has really cooled off. Guess maybe we can start there. The DeAndre Hopkins storyline of him being traded is not only slow in Cleveland, it's slow in football altogether. Not really seeing a lot of storylines of anyone really sniffing the DeAndre Hopkins trade. In fact, if anything, looks like DeAndre Hopkins' market has really cooled. No one's ready to make a move yet. Don't think you're going to see much this week or next week either. I think this is something you're going to see roll into late July, maybe August, is he's going to have to wait for an injury too, which always does happen, and that's where you can spark money when you finally have a team or two that falls way off, or you have a team over this next week or two that panics and says, look, we really need a wide receiver. You get one. Maybe that'll happen too. It might. But the DeAndre Hopkins storyline's kind of slowed down. Haven't heard as much ramp up. You heard some things, obviously, from Deshaun Watson about wanting to play with him. But this week, is the last week for a while. Usually between now and after the 4th, there's nothing. And even after the 4th of July, it's like a 2-week period of dead zone, and then it starts really ramping up in around middle of July. It's going to wrap up a lot faster this year because you have the Hall of Fame preseason game with the Jets and the Browns. So you're going to have a lot going on, and obviously you're going to have a lot going on too with Joe Thomas getting elected in the Hall of Fame. All that to be said, this is the last week for a while. And, the big things I took out from this week, everyone's talking about the wide receivers. Everyone's talking about how exciting the offense looks for Deshaun Watson. And it's very fair, and it's great. Reporters were very excited about Marquise Goodwin. Multiple reporters talked very highly about Elijah Moore. DPJ, who always seems to perform well in mandatory minicamp, performed well again this week too. Can't say that's a negative. What does this mean in the season? I don't know. Tough to say. But okay. The passing game looked great. You can't get mad about that, can you? No. But okay, looked great. That's good to see. Deshaun Watson looked really good. Okay, good. That's good. What I've learned in these mandatory minicamps, I can't stress this enough. OTAs too, we'll throw that in there. It doesn't mean much. It means nothing. Training camp has some value. Not a lot, but has some value. Minicamp gets forgotten very quickly. OTAs gets forgotten really quickly. But it's good. It's good to see the passing game is doing very well. The other word that was really thrown around was new. We're a new offense. This is a new defense. Felt like there might have been a new Kevin Stefanski this week, who was very, very, how should we say, he was a little biting with people saying, oh, aren't you excited about the offense scoring points? Well, there's a defense too. I'm a head coach, not an offensive coordinator. Okay, Kevin. The Browns feel new. They do. They last year felt like a mess. It felt like a three-ring circus. The year before that wasn't new. High expectations and a team that really failed. Then you had COVID. So this is the first time in a while it's new. It does feel new. New with excitement. New offense, new defense. It's great. A lot of players, a lot of coaches have been saying that. The real takeaways I had are these. I mean, again, you can get excited about the passing game, cool. Get excited about new offense, new defense, as we should. My God. That was a terrible, terrible experience the last two seasons. Wasn't 1-31, but 8-9, 7-10 doesn't cut it either. So what did I really take away from this week? There's really some emphasis being put on the defensive line. Finally, defensive line stuff. Good to see. They are really putting emphasis on not just Myles Garrett, but the entire defensive line. And that's great. That's what it needs to be. I was taught at ESPN by people who were former general managers. The most important position on defense is your defensive line. The Browns, not just this regime. This is not just a new thing. But for my 43 years on this planet, the Browns have always been excited about secondaries, cornerbacks, safeties. I'd even throw in there, even our different position linebackers. We have never really focused on defensive line. This is the first time in my 43 years, 44 in August, where the Browns are really focused on defensive line. And that's great to see, and that is not a little note. Finally, some real care and some real effort, and I like this Zadarius Smith a lot. Not just because he's performing well in practice. I like the fact he's giving Myles Garrett some real edge already. Zadarius Smith doesn't hide. He's here to win divisions, and you can tell he's creating a type of camaraderie that Myles Garrett kind of needs. Zadarius Smith doesn't mind talking in front of a microphone. Zadarius Smith doesn't mind having competitions with Garrett to see who can get up the field faster. I like that. Myles Garrett hasn't experienced that at all. And Zadarius Smith isn't being disrespectful. He's just being competitive. I like that. No matter how this falls and whatever happens, Zadarius Smith is doing the right thing with Myles Garrett. It should impact positively on his play on the field. I like how the defensive line's doing that. I like that energy from Zadarius Smith, and I like that combo already. It has nothing to do with play. It's mental. I like the fact that Darius Smith is challenging Garrett a little bit at little things that Garrett never gets challenged at. They had a competition. Great job by Cleveland.com. How fast can you get off the ball? So Darius Smith and Garrett. And Darius Smith beat him a couple times. It's good. It's good to see. He needs to be putting through some competition. It's been a lot of rose-covered and, red carpet ceremonies at times for him. And he's deserved it. He's a great player, but there's nothing wrong with some competition. So Darius Smith brings a level of competitiveness that I haven't seen on a defensive line ever. It's good to see. I like Schwartz too early on. I like it. I like the energy. I like it. I like this defense already. Doesn't mean it's going to be great. Doesn't mean it's going to translate to wins. We have to see how this summer goes. But I like the fact that we're finally getting some things and hearing some things that I never hear about from the Browns. Boy, we're expecting big things from the defensive line. Boy, we need to do better defensive line. Boy, defensive line is what makes, hey, that's stuff we don't hear. And again, it's not just this regime. It's been here a long time. Focus on the secondary cornerbacks. And there's been some regimes focused on linebackers. It's time to focus on the defensive line. And this team is finally focused on the defensive line. Wouldn't be surprised they have a pretty good year if they stay healthy. The other thing I noticed was this gentleman who we got from free agency, McLeod. I like him. Leadership, again, I like that. I like how we got a guy in here who can kind of help out with the secondary. I also like the fact they're not giving out rose-colored, compliments to Denzel Ward or to Newsome. They want to see how these guys play. Martin Emerson has really risen up the ranks quickly in this OTA. That's the other thing I've noticed. They think very highly. Jim Schwartz thinks very, very highly of the second-year player from Mississippi State. He likes him a lot. Does not mean he dislikes Newsome or Ward. He does. He likes him. But he's being accurate, saying, look, because of Emerson's size and what he can do, Emerson needs to play outside. He's right. We'll see what that means for Ward. We'll see what that means for Newsome. Newsome especially is going to have to play a lot of inside, and that's okay. And you haven't heard any barking about that, and that's good. These minicamp OTAs, I thought, brought some good energy, and it wasn't any drama. You didn't hear anything about off the field. No OBJ. Gosh, there was a year OBJ got in a fight with everybody. Didn't hear about that this year. Duke Johnson quitting. God, that was the same OTA. That was a crazy OTA. Crazy. You're not hearing that this year, which is good. That is good to see. There's a lot of positive about this team. There's a lot of good things going on with this team. There's a lot of good energy going on with this team. It now takes a break. Hopefully they can pick back up as we get into mid to late July. So they go to Greenbrier in West Virginia. There's some time off, but there's some good excitement being built here. It is some good excitement. It is only, though, mandatory minicamp. Let's see what really happens. It gets a little bit more ramped up, as we know, in 6 weeks in training camp. But, yeah, this is the first one in a while. It leaves on a good note for the Browns, which is good to see. One more segment. Welcome back to the Believe in the Land show. My name is Andy Billman. Again, check all the things we do at Believe in the Land at believeintheland.com, Believe in the Land YouTube, also at official Cleveland Sports on Instagram. We're there after every Guardians game this fall. Come there. It's been a good week. It's been a fun week. A lot of clapping after games, which is always good to see and hear. Okay, Buckeyes. So there were some things that came on this week with the Big Ten. They announced what they're going to do with their new scheduling. In case you missed it, in 2024-25, UCLA and USC obviously get added, but they decided to roll through who everybody's going to be playing. The one thing that really stuck out to me, which I thought was a miss by many people, was they're not going to be playing Penn State, Ohio State every year anymore. I think the Big Ten gets into some weird wonky rivalries that I don't think have as much value as Ohio State, Penn State. They've decided to say that's not I just don't understand that move. I know there's some historical rivalries that people will tell me with glasses and pens, Andy, you don't understand. The Illini Buck Trophy is a big deal. I just don't quite understand the fascination with some of these rivalries, and then you throw away the momentum of Penn State, Ohio State. Those two states border each other. They're both football states, high school football powers in Penn State and Pennsylvania. And obviously Ohio's a huge football tradition in high school. So they typically play each other all the time in those two states. They cross over. Erie Prep, I remember playing my team, Bishop Watterson, and vice versa. And there's all that kind of stuff, and it's fun. And I just think that rivalry was a good one, and it is a rivalry. There's some very good matchups there. They're fun games. They're big games, big stages. And for the Big Ten and for others to decide, you know what, we can play every other year, I think that's a big miss. That game had a lot of juice to it, and it's a real rivalry. To save some of these other rivalries above it, I just not quite understanding the fascination by it. But that's what they decided. I think that's a big miss. I think it's a big miss. Those two schools playing each other every year was a good thing. So they get to play two more times in 23 and 24. There will be no game between Penn State and Ohio State in 25. Very weird times. Ohio State, for the most part, has gone dormant, as it should. This is their quiet time, as it is the Browns. You really won't see any Buckeye stuff. There's, different articles here and there talking about different things. As you know, just to wrap up the Buckeyes into a bow right now, it's all about beating Michigan next year, as we all know. And who's the quarterback? I think both questions can be answered the same way. If you believe in Ryan Day, then everything should be okay. You should be able to figure out your quarterback. He's done very well quarterbacks with Justin Fields and Stroud last year. And I'm sure he'll figure out who to start and who to develop. But there's certainly some questions there. There's some questions outside the two guards, too. Who's going to start the offensive line? There's some real questions there. And the defense didn't really improve from last year. Some big discussions there, too. There's certainly some questions for the Buckeyes. It's not a for sure thing this year. It's the first time in a while this offseason. You're not going in there going, okay, you have Stroud, you got Smith and Jigba, throwing Henderson running back, and boom. You don't have that feeling. In fact, even the running back room is kind of like, Running backs kind of took a step back last year for the Buckeyes. They should be okay. Offensive line should be okay. But it's not as defined. It's not as blueprint. It's not as, this is how it's going to work. This is Buckeye football in 2023. It's not that way this year. It's been a long time since it's been kind of murky, and it's kind of murky. And it makes some Buckeye fans nervous, and as it should. As it should. It's not a for sure thing on how they're going to do this year. Last year was pretty straightforward. And then you add in the element that Michigan's going to be very good. I mean, very good next year. Add some tension to the Buckeyes, as it should. Big year. They've got to beat Michigan this year. Got to. You cannot start going down the road of John Cooper losing that game every year again. Guardians, have a great week. 4-2. One of the best wins of the year on Friday night against the Astros, 10-9. Not just from our standpoint, but historically. 2 in baseball. Tied 5 different comebacks after the 7th inning was remarkable. They have a lot of good things going for them right now. JRAM had a great week. Brennan's been on fire. Naylor's been on fire. Karen Shack set down. Shane Bieber rumors, I think, kind of cool off. And Mike Zanino, it's an issue. They're going to have to figure out catcher. The Browns had good mandatory minicamp. The big word that's been tossed around is new. I definitely saw a new Myles Garrett at the podium. I definitely like this Zadarius Smith. I think he's going to actually push Garrett to do some things, which is good. And the Buckeyes and Nittany Lions do not play in 2025, and they will be playing every other year after that in the even years. The odd years will not be Penn State and Ohio State. And that was the week it was in Cleveland sports. Next week, the NBA playoffs should end. Looks like Denver's going to win, and then we'll get more into Cavalier basketball then. Nothing really to report right now. Guardians go on the road. A lot going on in San Diego and Arizona. Have a have a great week. Check out Believe in the Land and BelieveInTheLand.com. See you on Official Cleveland Sports starting on Tuesday.